You turn on the tap, you use the water, and then it just disappears down the drain. But that's not the end of the story. Not even close. It's actually the beginning of this incredible, almost invisible journey. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that fascinating process, how we transform our used water from, well, waste into a super clean, valuable resource. Seriously, have you ever really thought about it? It's a question we just don't ask, but the answer is this amazing feat of engineering and biology. That water goes on this multi-stage trip through a treatment plant, and every single step is designed to meticulously clean it before it goes back to the environment. So let's follow that journey. First up, what are we even dealing with? What's in that water? Okay, so the water leaving our homes is a pretty complex soup. It's packed with organic waste, food scraps, human waste, all that stuff. We measure this with something called biochemical oxygen demand, or BOD. Just remember that for later. It's also got all these tiny particles floating around that make it cloudy. That's total suspended solids, or TSS. And on top of all that, you've got nutrients, potentially nasty pathogens, and just all sorts of debris. If we just let this stuff out into the wild, it would be a huge threat to our health and our ecosystems. All right, the first stop on this cleaning journey is primary treatment. The easiest way to think about this stage is like a giant mechanical sorting system. Its one and only job is to get all the big, heavy, and floaty things out of the water before the real deep cleaning can even start. So this part starts with just brute force. First up is screening. Imagine massive screens that act like bouncers at a club, blocking anything big, plastics, branches, you name it, that could mess up the equipment down the line. Next, the water's flow is intentionally slowed way down in these things called grit chambers. This lets all the heavier stuff like sand or coffee grounds just sink to the bottom. Finally, the water flows into these huge sedimentation tanks, where it just sits for a couple of hours. Here, gravity takes over, and most of the remaining solids settle to the bottom, forming this layer we call primary sludge. And you know what? This purely physical process is surprisingly effective. It gets rid of about 60% of those suspended solids and more than a third of the organic pollution. But, and this is a big but, the water might look a little clearer, but it is still loaded with dissolved pollutants you can't see. And to deal with those, we've got to call in the specialists. And here they are. Welcome to secondary treatment. This is the living, breathing heart of the whole wastewater plant. This is where we stop using simple machines and instead unleash a massive, hungry army of microorganisms to do the really hard work for us. So, what is this microbe army actually fighting? Well, it's that BOD we mentioned earlier, the biochemical oxygen demand. Basically, think of BOD as a measure of all the food, the organic pollution, that's available for these microbes to eat. A high BOD means super polluted water that can kill fish and other aquatic life. So the mission is simple. Let the microbes eat the pollution and make that BOD level plummet. And the most common way we do this is with a method called the activated sludge process. Honestly, the best way to think about it is as a perfectly managed all-you-can-eat buffet for bacteria. We're just creating the absolute perfect dining experience for them to chow down on all those pollutants. This buffet has 3 main courses. First, the water goes into an aeration tank, and we're just bubbling a constant stream of air through it. This gives the microbes all the oxygen they need to breathe while they feast. After they're full and happy, the whole mix flows into a quiet tank called a secondary clarifier. Here, the well-fed microbes all clump together into sludge and sink. But here's the genius part. We take a portion of this activated sludge, our most experienced eaters, and send it right back to the beginning of the tank to kickstart the process for the next batch of water. It's a perfect recycling system. And the results? They are absolutely incredible. This whole biological process is so ridiculously effective that by the time the water leaves this stage, a staggering 85 to 90% of the total organic pollution, that BOD, has been completely eaten and removed. Now, for a lot of places, the journey could end right there. But when the goal is to get the water exceptionally clean, there's one more stop: tertiary treatment. Think of this as the final polish, a super advanced stage that's like a massive, high-tech water filter. At this point, we are targeting the really stubborn stuff. We're talking about the last little bits of cloudiness, any harmful pathogens still hanging around, and this is a big one: excess nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. And why do we care so much about those? Well, because if they get into rivers and lakes, they act like fertilizer, causing these massive, destructive algae blooms that can totally chuck an entire ecosystem. So this final polish uses some really cool tech,
First, there's filtration, where the water gets pushed through incredibly fine filters to trap the last microscopic particles. Then comes that crucial nutrient removal step. And finally, for the ultimate safety check, the water is disinfected. This is often done with either chlorine or powerful UV light, which zaps any leftover pathogens by basically scrambling their DNA so they can't do any harm.
And this quote really sums up why this last and often expensive stage is so important. The whole point is to create water that's so clean it can be safely returned to delicate environments, or even better, be ready for reuse in things like agriculture or industry. It's all about protecting our world and creating new resources. So let's step back. After this whole three-stage journey, what have we really accomplished? Well, the water has gone through a truly remarkable transformation, and when you look at the numbers, that's where the story gets really powerful. Just look at this. After that final polish, we've gotten rid of 95 to 98% of the organic pollution and up to 99% of the suspended solids. But check out the pathogens line. It says a 2 to 4 log reduction. So what on earth does that mean? Well, a 1 log reduction is 90% gone. A 2 log reduction is 99%. A 4 log reduction, that's 99.99% of pathogens gone. So for every million harmful microbes that went in, we've knocked them down to fewer than 100, and maybe even down to just 1. That's the power of this process.
Let's put that key pollution metric, BOD, into perspective with a picture. The incoming water, the influent, starts with a BOD level of around 150. After this whole treatment process, that number has absolutely plummeted to less than 5. It is a staggering drop, and it means that water is now safe enough to return to the environment.
And there you have it. We follow that water on its journey all the way from a complex, polluted soup to a clear, clean liquid that's safe for the environment. And more is becoming a vital resource for our future. It really makes you think, doesn't it? If we've figured out how to partner with nature to clean our dirtiest water to this incredible degree, what does that open up for the future of water reuse? As our world desperately searches for sustainable solutions, this hidden journey, happening right under our feet, might just hold some of the most important keys.